So, did you know esophageal cancer is one of the deadliest cancers in the world? In 2024, there were an estimated 494,000 new cases, and about 442,000 people died from the disease. This means that nearly 9 out of 10 people diagnosed with esophageal cancer ultimately die from it. Hey guys, and welcome to How to Gastro, Medical Lectures Made Easy, presented by me, Dr. I. Govender. So in today's video, we'll be doing a deep dive into esophageal cancer, the early warning signs, diagnosis, and treatment. So let's get started. So let's start with a definition. What is esophageal cancer? So esophageal cancer is cancer that occurs in the esophagus, which is the long hollow tube that runs from the throat to the stomach. So from the throat area to the stomach, this whole tube is known as the esophagus, and esophageal cancer refers to cancer cells which form within this hollow tube. So the esophagus essentially carries the food we swallow to our stomachs to be digested, and that's its basic function in the human body. So where does esophageal cancer begin? So esophageal cancer usually begins in the cells that line the inside of the esophagus and can occur anywhere along this hollow tube. So anywhere from the throat area all the way from the stomach, cancer can occur anywhere along the tube, and it occurs in the innermost layer, which is the mucosal layer of the esophagus. So it occurs most frequently in the middle portion of the esophagus, however, and more men than women are prone to the development of the disease. So what are the different types of cancer that may develop within the esophagus? So the squamous cell carcinomas are actually the main type of cancer that develops, and this can occur in the upper and the middle esophagus, and they are most commonly attributed to smoking, alcohol abuse, and they are more common worldwide than the adenocarcinomas. So the adenocarcinomas are another type of cancer that can develop within the esophagus, and it usually occurs here in the lower esophagus. And it's usually due to acid reflux, long-standing, and Barrett's esophagus, also due to smoking, and it's increasing more in Western countries. So there are two main types of esophageal carcinomas, basically the squamous cell carcinomas and the adenocarcinomas, which each have distinct sets of risk factors. So squamous cell carcinomas are linked to lifestyle factors such as smoking and alcohol, while the adenocarcinomas have been linked to the effects of long-term acid reflux. So tobacco, however, is a risk factor for both types. So let's talk a little bit about the squamous cell carcinomas. So the squamous cells are flat, thin cells that line the surface of the esophagus, and the squamous cell carcinomas occur most often in the middle of the esophagus, and they are the most prevalent esophageal cancer worldwide. So risk factors again include smoking, alcohol intake, consuming very hot drinks frequently, poor nutrition, and previous head and neck cancers. And these cancers that develop due to previous head and neck cancers are usually referred to as secondary primary cell carcinomas rather than metastases. And this is what the aspect of the squamous cell carcinoma looks like. And then we have the other type of cancer, which are the adenocarcinomas. So the adenocarcinoma most commonly develops in the lower part of the esophagus, and you'll see in a short while the reason why. So it occurs near the junction where the esophagus actually meets the stomach. So it is strongly associated with long-standing gastroesophageal reflux disease, which is referred to as Gerd, and Barrett's esophagus, which is a chronic condition in which chronic acid exposure causes the normal lining of the lower esophagus to change, and over time these abnormal cells can become cancerous. So remember, the entire tube of the esophagus is made up of one type of cell, but at the point where the stomach and the esophagus meet, there's sort of different cell structures coming together. So when we have chronic reflux, here's what the normal esophagus looks like, and then in patients who suffer from reflux, we have abnormal cells developing, which is referred to as Barrett's esophagus, and that usually occurs in the bottom part of the esophagus. And long-standing Barrett's esophagus can actually lead to precancerous changes, which is referred to as dysplasia, meaning a change in the cell type. And then we have low-grade dysplasia that develops, then high-grade dysplasia, and eventually cancerous cells. So the risk factors of the adenocarcinomas are male, Caucasian race, increased age, reflux or Gerd, obesity, and smoking. So what are the signs and symptoms of esophageal cancer? So most patients will present with a difficulty in swallowing, which is referred to as dysphagia. So if you can imagine, the cancer cells will start to invade the hollow tube where food usually passes freely. So the larger this tumor gets, the more difficult it feels for food to go down. So food will feel stuck when swallowing, and it usually starts with solid foods, which are larger to pass, and then it progresses to even a difficulty in swallowing liquids. Patients may also complain of unintentional weight loss, so losing weight without trying due to a difficulty in eating and reduced food intake can also occur. Chest pain or discomfort, so pain, pressure, or burning sensation behind the breastbone is also common in these patients. Persistent heartburn or indigestion. Ongoing or worsening acid reflux symptoms is also common, particularly in patients who have an adenocarcinoma. They may also suffer from regurgitation or vomiting. So this is when food comes back up after eating because it cannot pass through the narrow esophagus. And then they may suffer from persistent cough or hoarseness. So a chronic cough or hoarse voice may be caused by irritation or spread of the tumor. Also remember, if patients are refluxing, they will develop sort of a hoarseness because they are more at risk for aspiration. And then we can have the vomiting of blood, which is known as hematemesis. This is an uncommon but serious symptom that is usually caused by the bleeding from the tumor, and the blood may be bright red or resemble coffee grounds, and this requires urgent medical attention. So what are the risk factors of esophageal cancer? So it is thought that chronic irritation of the esophagus may contribute to the DNA changes that cause esophageal cancer. So factors that can cause irritation in the cells of the esophagus and increase the risk of esophageal cancer include lifestyle factors such as smoking, alcohol intake, and obesity. Medical factors, which include gastroesophageal reflux disease, Barrett's esophagus, achalasia, and genetics. And a diet which is low in fruit, low in vegetable intake, and high in hot beverage intake. So these are all common risk factors that may lead to the development of an esophageal cancer. The complications of esophageal cancer. So as the esophagus cancer advances, it can cause complications, as we mentioned in the previous slides, like an esophageal obstruction. So cancer may make it difficult or impossible for food and liquid in advanced cases to pass through the esophagus, and this may lead to malnutrition and obstruction in the esophagus. So as we see here, as the tumor increases in size, it will occlude more and more of the esophagus, eventually leading to an obstruction and also malnutrition in these patients. Pain, so advanced esophageal cancer can cause pain. There can also be bleeding of the esophagus, as we mentioned, in cases where hematemesis occurs. So bleeding is usually gradual, but can be sudden and severe at times. So the test and diagnosis, similar to this slide here, this is actually a barium swallow test, which shows an obstruction of the esophagus. So a barium swallow is an X-ray examination used to evaluate the esophagus, and during the test, the patient drinks a liquid containing barium contrast, which coats the lining of the esophagus and makes it visible on X-rays. So it can identify narrowing, which is known as strictures, tumors, ulcers, or swallowing abnormalities, and is often one of the first investigations performed in patients with a difficulty in swallowing, which is dysphagia. So this is what the normal aspect of the esophagus looks like. As we can see, all the liquid is passing through freely without any obstruction. But in cases where a tumor is invading from the esophageal wall into the hollow tube, we see less and less contrast is visible in this portion of the esophagus where the cancer cells have developed. So if we take a closer look here, we see that cancer is invading the walls of the esophagus, and we see what it looks like on a barium X-ray. We can also do an upper GI endoscopy for diagnosis. So the use of a scope to examine the esophagus is referred to as an endoscopy. And during an endoscopy, a hollow tube equipped with a lens, which is known as an endoscope, is passed into the esophagus. So we can also collect a sample of tissue for testing, which is referred to as a biopsy, during the upper GI endoscopy process. And this can be taken so that cellular studies can confirm the diagnosis of a tumor or malignancy. We can also do computed tomography. So the CT scan usually uses X-rays to produce detailed cross-sectional images of the body. So CT scans are not usually used to diagnose esophageal cancer, but they can help to show where it is in the esophagus and if it has spread to any nearby organs and lymph nodes or to distant parts of the body. So the purpose of the CT is to show the tumor size, it looks for spread, and it helps plan for surgical purposes. We can also do MRI or magnetic resonance imaging. So like CT scans, the MRI scans provide detailed images of soft body tissues in the body. But the MRI scans use radio waves and strong magnets instead of X-rays. So like CT scans, MRIs are not usually used to diagnose esophageal cancer, but they can help to show where it is in the esophagus and if it has spread to any nearby organs, meaning there's metastases. A PET scan may also be ordered. So for a PET scan, a form of radioactive sugar known as fluorodeoxyglucose or FDG is injected into the blood, and the amount of radioactivity used is very low, and it will pass out of the body over the next day or so. So cancer cells in the body grow rapidly, so they absorb large amounts of radioactive sugar. So after about an hour after the patient consumes it, the patient is moved onto a table where the PET scanner can actually scan the patient. So PET scans are useful because they show areas where cancer cells are highly active. So how is esophageal cancer staged? So stage 1 means the cancer are found only in the layer of cells that line the esophagus. So basically here in the mucosal layer only. So the tumor is in the innermost layer of the esophagus. Stage 2 means that the cancer has reached the muscle layer or the outer wall of the esophagus. In addition, the cancer may have spread to 1 or 2 nearby lymph nodes. So here we've got the tumor growing through the walls of the esophagus. Stage 3 is when the cancer has directly invaded into the lymph nodes adjacent to or next to the esophagus. And then stage 4 means that the cancer has directly invaded into the deepest muscle layer of the esophagus and or spread to other organs in the body, such as the lungs, the liver, distant lymph nodes, or the bones. And that's where all the common sites of esophageal metastases occur, in the lungs, the liver, the distant lymph nodes, and the bones. The surgical treatment of esophageal cancer. So local tumor removal can be done, and this can only be done in cases of small, early-stage tumors confined to the innermost lining of the esophagus, and this may be removed along with the margin of healthy tissue. In other cases, we can do an esophagectomy, which is the removal of the cancerous portion of the esophagus and nearby lymph nodes, followed by reconnecting the remaining esophagus to the stomach. So as we can see here in this image, the tumor was located right there. That portion of the esophagus is resected, and this lower portion of the esophagus, a portion of the stomach, is then pulled through the diaphragm and is sewed back up to the esophagus. And in this way, the reconnecting of the remaining esophagus and stomach is done. And then we can also have an esophagogastrectomy, which is the removal of the upper part of the esophagus and the upper portion of the stomach. And this is obviously the surgery of choice in cases of adenocarcinomas rather than the squamous cell carcinomas. And in these cases, the nearby lymph nodes will also be removed if they are affected. So chemotherapy can also be done in these patients. So chemotherapy uses powerful anti-cancer drugs to destroy cancer cells. It is often given before surgery to shrink the tumor as a neoadjuvant therapy, or after surgery to reduce the risk of cancer returning as an adjuvant therapy. So chemotherapy may also be combined with radiation therapy to improve treatment outcomes. We can also do radiation therapy in these patients. So, radiation therapy uses high energy beams to destroy cancer cells. It may be delivered from a machine outside the body, which is referred to as an external beam radiation source, or less commonly from a source placed near the tumor, which is called brachytherapy. So, radiation therapy is often combined with chemotherapy and may be given before or after surgery. It can also help to relieve symptoms in advanced esophageal cancer, such as a difficulty in swallowing. So, this is what the external beam radiation looks like. And this here is actually the brachytherapy. Basically, a nasogastric tube is inserted into the food pipe or the esophagus. And we see here the tumor, we see the radioactive source being delivered. Essentially, those radioactive chemicals will eat away at the tumor. So, when should you see a doctor? If you have a difficulty in swallowing, a sensation of food sticking, unexplained weight loss, persistent reflux, or vomiting blood, please don't wait. Seek urgent medical attention. And that brings us to the end of this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you found the presentation very interesting and informative. Please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and to share this video with someone you think may benefit from it. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.